Hello guys, welcome and thank you for joining me for this little video that I've put together discussing the main protagonist of Exiled from the Sky, Verkra. This will mainly be discussing a couple of the animations and how I achieved the aiming vectors. People had questions on that, aiming in and out of the layers, and also an unused animation that I would have liked to include in the game, but I just couldn't find a way to do it at the time. But yeah, without further ado, here we go. So we're going to start off with the unused animation that I would have liked to have included in the main game of Exiled. It got a little bit technical during the making process, and of course in the first game I was kind of limited to time constraints, like I mentioned before in one of the other videos when I was making the game. So I couldn't really find a good way to incorporate it, but if I did, it probably would have been a bit of a game change. But yeah, so the animation in question is actually an abduct feature, which I did kind of use in part 2, but in a different way. So you can see here that I'm picking up this little metal block and moving it around and manipulating it and stuff, and there you have it. When it gets too close, it gets absorbed into the UFO. Funny thing is about Exiled is it actually started off life as a very different idea. I made the UFO a long time ago. The idea was I was going to use it in a funny game that you could sort of absorb cows with and things like that. I've actually put a few sort of little cow models over there, so to give a little brief idea of what the game was supposed to be at the time. It was very different from what it turned out to be. But yeah, you can see here that there's no limit to sort of weight. That's a giant piece of metal there that Verkra is moving around. You can see that it's literally no constraints on weight. It could have picked up and absorbed anything. And as the video goes on, I'll actually show how I achieved this. It's quite simple actually. But yeah, so the idea was I was going to have like a weird little mini game where, you know, you're a UFO and the layout was going to be sort of like a farm, and you were going to abduct cows and leave crop circles. And you know, that probably would have made for a really fun game, but Exiled just morphed into something else. Yeah, so as I mentioned a moment earlier, I'm actually going to show how I achieved that little absorb effect, the animation that I demonstrated first. But yeah, I'm just showing here actually another unused animation. So originally, when I started making Exiled into what it was, well, Exiled from the Sky, Sackboy was going to be the main sort of protagonist, and you know, I was going to kind of make up some kind of story of, you know, why he looks the way he does, because he's actually an alien, you know, made out of stitches and stuff. It was quite a wildly different story, and that little crash effect was going to be a feature that now and again you could be in a fight and Sackboy would actually get knocked out of the UFO, but I decided to scrap that in the end. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed there, but if you looked closely, you can actually see these tiny dots that appear. There we go, I'm zooming in on one right now. So that is the main, basically the main feature of the absorb effect. It's basically just a piece of cardboard that's sticky, and I'm just showing here that it has a mover and a lookout rotator and a controlinator on it. Now the controlinator's set to be a radio. It's set to be a receiver to the main controlinator that you sit in within the UFO. The follower, obviously through the controls, through the transmission of the controlinator, that activates the follower and the lookout rotator, and also the emitter there. So yeah, for anybody that doesn't really know, you can set up a sort of remote control relationship between controlinators. It's surprising how many people don't actually know that, but I'd say most creators do. But yeah, so the simple in and out of it is that the UFO spawns a little tiny piece of cardboard, like you can see there. I've just blown it up, and it sticks to whatever it lands on. It's set to sticky, and then when you press R2, I think it is, or R1, doesn't matter, you can have it as any button, it will actually then pick it up slowly and bring it towards the UFO with the follower and then the lookout rotator, if you move the UFO around, it will twist and turn the object to, you know, follow you and rotate it in the correct manner that it will actually look at the UFO as well. But yeah, these little effects here, just a few decorations, but it was just to animate when you actually do press the absorb button that the object is in fact, you know, sort of coming towards you. And it's just another way of showing the animation itself. Just a nice little effect that I wanted to put in, as well as the light that the UFO emits. There, you can see it there. Yeah, it's just quite basic, simple stuff, really. It's just a sticky piece of cardboard set to follow the UFO, and when it gets too close, there's a destroyer on the piece of cardboard that's set to rigid connections. So whatever it's touching, it will absorb as well. So yeah, quite simple, basic stuff, and I would have liked to have had it in the original game, but I just couldn't find a place for it. Okay, so moving on now, I'm going to demonstrate the aiming vectors that were introduced in Exiled Part 2. I didn't have this in Part 1, as I mentioned before in the commentary videos. Part 1 was quite restrictive; it was more of a story, and Part 2 was a lot more interactive. So I decided to change it up in Part 2 and give the player a lot more control. I'm just looking at that player sensor there. That's actually quite important. That stops the player from being able to fly off in the game, and it actually just restricts the play. It's just attached to a mover within the UFO. When the player gets too close, it triggers the mover and it forces the UFO back down, so you can't fly off. There is physical barriers. Again, when I have the time at some point, I will be doing a behind the scenes. But anyway, moving on. So you'll notice that there's two bits of cardboard on pistons there, and then they are attached to an invisible piece of holographic material, and then also you can see a string coming off what looks like a microchip, but it's actually a square piece of hologram. So the idea is that each piece there, the pieces of cardboard on the pistons attached to the hologram, the hologram itself follows the UFO. The pistons are set to have no stiffness, but they have sort of maximum capacity, as in how far they can move in and out. And the idea was that you can see there the string pulling on that piece of hologram that I mentioned before, and the vectors themselves, they're loose, they're completely loose, they're just two loose pieces of cardboard that I animated to spin around and light up. But they follow that piece of, there you go, you can see it there, they follow that piece of hologram. Now, it can only go so far because it's stuck on that string that's following the UFO. And then I needed a way without sort of bolting it onto the UFO itself, because, I mean, I might do another behind the scenes video, but there's so many different components attached to the UFO that it just got a bit too confusing. But also, for another reason, I wanted to be able to move the vector in and out of layers. That's where the pieces of cardboard come in, and the pistons, because everything moves on in and out movers. You can see there, just on the edge of that microchip, that there's a couple of in and out movers. Now that's controlled by L1, L2. Again, you can have it as any button setup that you like. But the idea is that I needed a rig that would follow the UFO, but also be allowed to stay loose and move and track the UFO as well. So it's just it follows it by tags, and I'm going to show here a little demonstration of why the pieces of cardboard and the pistons are set to the maximum distance in the game. They're actually in two corners of the level, so right in the bottom right corner and right in the top left. And yeah, so you can see there, when you move out of its ability to flex, it will just stop. And because the pistons, the cardboard, the hologram, and the string attached to the other piece of hologram aren't attached to the UFO in any way at all, that allows control of moving in and out of the layers. But you can see there how these two circular vectors, they follow that piece of hologram no matter what. So it gives the impression, the illusion, basically, that that you're in full control of the moving in and out of the layers, which you are, but it's not attached to the UFO in any way. So I didn't want people to be able to move the vector sort of right the other way, right the other end of the level. I needed a restriction, hence the piece of string. So it's just one big separate rig, and the pistons made for the perfect thing to anchor it all together. Like I say, they attach to the hologram follows the UFO then moves, and it allows the pistons to move in and out with it. So again, quite simple stuff. So this is just a really quick demonstration of switching between the two weapons. Probably made a bit of a mistake here, but I used the same button that you use to move the UFO, L3, and you have to click that within the game to actually change the weaponry. And that is literally just set to a selector. You can see there right in the middle of the main chip, the selector switching back and forth, and the two longer microchips directly below it, the one on the left is for the electric, the one on the right is for fire. And, yeah, so it's just another way of interactivity, and you can't use both at the same time, but both of the vectors follow exactly the same path, so if you had them on at the same time, you couldn't distinguish between the two. So here we have an example of what the lights actually are. They're actually swivel spotlights, I think they're called, or swivel lights. So they were sort of new to LittleBigPlanet 3, but this is where I first saw the potential of the idea of having the aiming vector move in and out of layers. So in Exiled, the game, the UFO is basically set right in the middle of the 16 layers, more or less. So you could shoot at things in the foreground and the background, and you can see there the light beams actually follow the vectors, or rather a tag within the within the vectors. So again, when you shoot the laser or you use the burn effect, it gives the impression that they're actually looking at the vectors or following the vector's path. So there we have it, guys. Just a quick video, like I mentioned before. I'm actually working on another project at the minute called Arcane, which is going to take me a little bit of time, but I'm working as fast as I can to get that out. So yeah, if there's any questions, feel free to ask. And I might actually make a tutorial video on how to make a simple UFO setup for anybody that might want it. But yeah, just wanted to say thank you for stopping by, and hope you all have a good day, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you want more.